The idea of ghost stories around Christmas time, outside of Charles Dickens Christmas Carol, sounds like something that you wouldn't expect this time of the year. But actually telling ghost stories was once a tradition, as families would gather around the fire and tell ghost stories. But this is all but forgotten. But in Victorian times, it was a big deal. Unfortunately, the traditional family ghost stories appear to be all but forgotten, other than the aforementioned Christmas Carol. So why don't we bring back this tradition by gathering around a warm fire and tell 5 haunting Christmas ghost stories that will either send shivers down your spine or maybe warm your heart a little. Number 5. The Bright Light. The following story was told by Scarlett, who had a strange Christmas experience that left her confused but comforted at the same time. Her house had something of an unusual visitor back on Christmas of 2008 in Bloomington, Indiana. Everyone had gathered around the tree to open their presents, and because Scarlett had prepared Christmas dinner early, their friends and extended family had all left by 5 p.m. Her sister and brother-in-law lived with her and were asleep in their bedroom at the end of the hallway. Scarlett slept with her dog Toby and went to bed securely shutting the door. She was just dozing off when she was suddenly startled by the sound of the latch on her bedroom door opening. She waited a few seconds, presuming it was her sister or brother-in-law at the door and they would tell her what they wanted, but nobody said anything. At this stage it was late and her room was completely dark. The lights in the kitchen and the bathroom were on, as were the Christmas lights in the lounge room, and there was also plenty of light in the hallway. So if someone had stuck their head in, she could easily have seen them. Confused, she had lifted her head up from the pillow when her eyes were hit with a bright light. It was so bright that she had to shield her eyes and screamed at whoever it was to turn out the light because it was blinding her. The light disappeared instantly and the bedroom door suddenly shut. She quickly switched on the bedside lamp and surveyed the room. Then Toby jumped down from the bed and headed for the door. She felt safe as Toby was a well-trained Dutch shepherd and was also an excellent watchdog. She then got up to see what her sister or brother-in-law had wanted. When she entered the hallway and quietly opened their bedroom door, she found them both sound asleep. They were the only other people in the house, so who was it that opened her bedroom door and shone the spotlight on her face? As it was Christmas, she'd been thinking of her mother and brother who had both passed on and was sad that they could not be around for Christmas. It was at that moment that she felt the light could have been her mother and brother paying her a visit, as there was no other rational explanation for this strange light. Number 4. Ghost Mother. In 1995, Vicky Page was 12 and was staying with her aunt at a home on a reservation in North Dakota. Some people were watching TV in the living room, the kids were playing in their rooms, and Vicky was sitting at the table with her aunt and uncle working on a jigsaw puzzle. Her cousin had arrived home at around midnight as they worked at a nearby casino. As her cousin pulled into the driveway and was coming towards the house, she looked through the window and saw Vicky sitting at the table with her aunt and uncle. But she also noticed someone standing to the left of Vicky and another person standing behind. She thought nothing of it, believing that they were guests, and walked into the house. As Vicky was chatting with her aunt and uncle, her cousin asked her who was standing next to her a few minutes ago and who was that person standing behind her. Vicky replied that there were no other people in the room except her aunt and uncle. Her cousin said that there was definitely someone next to her who resembled her mother, and they were running their hand through her hair, as a mother would do. Hearing this freaked her out a little, but her cousin insisted that she saw someone standing over her, stroking her head as she played with the jigsaw puzzle. Her cousin also swears that there was someone else standing behind her. Vicky thought that maybe it was her mother, who had passed away on her birthday a week before Christmas in 1992, paying her a visit. However, she could not work out who could have been standing behind her. Since then, something weird always seemed to happen around Christmas, but they all agreed that the person stroking her hair was probably her mother, wanting to spend Christmas with the family. Number 3. The Haunted Tree. In 1996, Caitlin Williams lived with her parents in a small house that was almost 100 years old. She lived in the old house from age 7 until she was 19. Caitlin claims that from the first day that they moved into the house, she had the feeling she wasn't alone. A year later at Christmas, she had a friend over for the night. As they were sitting in the living room watching TV, the heating suddenly went off and the temperature dropped. As she got up to put the heating back on, the Christmas tree started shaking violently. Ornaments fell from the trees and they were terrified. They quickly ran to the bedroom and hid under the blankets. As she lifted her head to take a quick peek, she was terrified when she saw a tall white figure run past her door and down the hall. She turned to ask a friend if she'd seen it too, and she confirmed she had. After that night, her friend never stayed over again. Number 2. The ghostly figure in the chair. Arthur had been very close to his mother, who passed away when he was 17 in 1964. That was also the year that he left home and moved from Nova Scotia to Ontario. In 1969, he met a girl called Karen, and they were married in March 1970. In December 1971, they were expecting their first child. They lived in a small 2-bedroom bungalow with a fireplace in the living room. They loved the fireplace, and in the winter, they would light up every night and gaze at the flames. It was Christmas Eve 1971, and they'd just put all the gifts under the tree, and the fire was giving off a lovely glow. The Christmas tree lights should have been flashing but had stopped working a few days previously. At around 5 minutes to midnight, the fireplace suddenly went out and the broken lights began to flash, and bizarrely, the other lights of the tree all went out. Arthur and his wife were sitting on the floor and noticed how chilly the room had become. Arthur then looked across to his recliner chair and saw that someone was sitting in it. It was his mother, and she was giving him a beautiful smile. His wife, who had never had the chance to meet his mother, said that she saw her too. The ghost never spoke. She just continued to look and smile at Arthur and his wife. Suddenly, the fireplace sprang back to life at midnight and the lights came back on the Christmas tree, all except for the lights that weren't flashing before, which went out again. Arthur looked back at the chair and saw that the ghost of his mother had disappeared. Number 1. The Christmas Choir. At 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve night in 1978, Mel was at home with her family in Klamath Falls, Oregon, when they were suddenly woken by the sound of a choir singing. The house they were living in had just been built and was situated several miles away from the nearest church, so it was obviously not coming from there. They checked the TV and radio, but they were turned off. They checked outside, but there was silence. They struggled to hear the words that were being sung and couldn't understand what they were singing. However, for some strange reason, they had a feeling of peace and felt they were listening to a heavenly choir. The singing lasted for about 10 minutes, with a combination of male, female and children's voices, ranging from operatic highs to deep bass lows in perfect harmony. That moment would stay with them for an eternity.